My name is Rachel Okonkwo. I'm 41 years old. And on a Thursday afternoon in November, sitting in the parking lot of a title company I'd never been to before, I learned that the house I'd been paying for since I was 34 had just been sold. Not by me, by my brother. And the $218,000 in equity that 7 years of my paychecks had built gone, distributed, divided between people whose names were on a deed that didn't include mine. I sat in that parking lot for 43 minutes. I know because I watched the time on my dashboard the way you watch a timer on something you can't turn off. Then I called a lawyer. But before I tell you what happened next, before I tell you about the lawsuit, the deposition, the moment my brother's attorney looked at my bank records and went very quiet, I need to take you back 7 years, to a Tuesday in October, to the week my father stopped breathing in a hospital room that smelled like hand sanitizer and old carpet. Because that's where this really starts. That's the Tuesday I agreed to something I didn't understand yet, in a grief so thick I couldn't see past it. If you've ever signed something you regretted because you loved someone at the wrong moment, drop a comment. I want to hear you. But first, subscribe. Because this story is long and it's real and I don't want you to miss a word. My father, Emmanuel Okonkwo, died on a Tuesday. He was 67. Prostate cancer diagnosed late, moved fast. He went from a man who mowed his own lawn and made jollof rice from scratch on Saturdays to a man in a hospital bed in 11 months. He left behind a two-story colonial in Greensboro, North Carolina. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a finished basement my brother had converted into a recording studio that nobody used, and a mortgage with $204,000 remaining. He also left behind my mother, Patricia, 64, retired, a pension from 28 years of working as a school librarian that covered her food and her medications if she was careful, and 2 children. My brother Marcus, 44 at the time, self-described entrepreneur. Actually, a man who cycled through business ideas the way other people cycled through gym memberships, with great enthusiasm in January and total silence by March. At the time of my father's death, Marcus had just folded a mobile detailing business, owed money to 3 people I knew personally, and was living in the colonial with our mother. Technically, temporarily, which in our family was a word that had lost all meaning by the time I was 30. And me, Rachel, 34, credit analyst at a regional bank, which is either deeply ironic or completely inevitable depending on how you look at it. I spent my days assessing whether other people were creditworthy. I was meticulous about risk. I had a 781 credit score, zero consumer debt, and a savings account I protected like it was a living thing. I also had, apparently, the kind of face people make promises to when they're in pain and need someone to hold something heavy. The conversation happened the week after the funeral. My mother's kitchen, 7 in the morning. Marcus sat across from me in a hoodie he'd been wearing for 4 days. My mother stood at the stove making tea she wouldn't drink. Outside, it was raining in that flat gray November way that makes everything feel permanent. Mama can't keep the house without help, Marcus said. You know that, I know. The mortgage company said there's a cosigner option. Someone with income, good credit takes over the obligation. Mama stays on as primary. She stays in her home, a beat I already called. You qualify? I looked at my mother's back, the way her shoulders sat exhausted, already carrying more than she showed. For how long? I asked. Marcus shrugged, just until things stabilize. A year, maybe 2, I'll be contributing. I've got a logistics project in the works. It's going to, how much is the payment? He paused, 2,800 a month. My salary at the time was $52,000 a year. Take home after taxes and my 401k was about $3,400 a month, 2,800 out of 3,400. The math was so ugly I almost laughed. But my mother's shoulders were shaking and she still hadn't turned around from the stove, and my father's reading glasses were still on the counter next to the fruit bowl where he'd left them. And I could not bring myself to say no to the woman who had worn the same church shoes for 9 years so she could put money into my college fund. Okay, I said. Marcus exhaled. Just until things stabilize, I repeated. You're contributing too, of course, he said. Absolutely. I drove home in the rain with the radio off. By the time I reached my apartment, the decision had already calcified into something I wasn't going to examine too closely. I signed the cosigner agreement 11 days later. The office smelled like carpet shampoo. I used a pen from a cup on the desk. I didn't bring a lawyer. I didn't negotiate terms. I signed in 2 places and initialed in 4, and the woman across the desk said, "Congratulations. You're helping your family keep their home." And I smiled because that's what you do when someone says something kind to you in a room where you've just made the most expensive mistake of your life. The first 3 months, Marcus sent $800. Not the $1,400 we discussed, but $800, and he sent it on the 22nd instead of the 1st, which meant I'd already transferred the full payment to cover the mortgage and was waiting on reimbursement. An inconvenience I told myself was temporary. Month 4, $400, he texted. Rough month, logistics deal fell through, working on something new. Month 7, nothing, he called instead. Left a voicemail, you know I'm good for it, Ratch. I'm taking care of mama, that's got to count for something. Month 12, nothing. Month 18, nothing, I kept paying. I want to be precise about that because I think precision matters when people try to understand how something like this happens. It doesn't happen because you're stupid. It doesn't happen because you're weak. It happens because every month you face a binary choice, pay, and your mother stays in her home or don't pay, and face the consequences of your name on a mortgage that's in default. When you're the person whose name is on the paper, walking away isn't freedom. It's financial ruin, so I paid. I moved out of my one-bedroom apartment and into a studio. $675 a month instead of $1,050. The studio had one window that faced a brick wall and a bathroom where the exhaust fan had given up sometime during the Obama administration. But it was $375 I could redirect toward the mortgage. I stopped buying clothes that weren't on clearance. I started packing lunch 5 days a week in a blue thermal bag I bought for $11 at TJ Maxx and used every day for 6 years. I cut my gym membership and ran outside, even in January, even in the rain. I drove my 2013 Honda Fit until the passenger door handle broke off, and I replaced it with a zip tie for 8 months before I could justify the repair. I became very good at math and very bad at receiving invitations. A work dinner, usually no, a friend's bachelorette, I'll come to the ceremony. A weekend trip, not this year. Not this year became not any year, and at some point my social circle compressed to the size of my lunch bag. Meanwhile, back at my father's house, Marcus was not contributing, but Marcus was living. He redid the basement recording studio. He bought a new sectional sofa for the living room, gray, L-shaped, the kind with the USB charging ports in the armrest that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. He got a golden retriever named Duke who chewed through 2 pairs of my mother's slippers and one kitchen cabinet before Marcus crated him in the finished basement. My mother reported these updates the way she reported weather, casually, with the assumption that they were either good or neutral news. Marcus got that sofa delivered Tuesday. It really brightens up the room. Mama, where did he get the money for a sofa? She went quiet in the way she went quiet when she knew the answer and didn't want to say it. I let the silence sit. He's been working on something. I knew what something meant. It meant nothing. It meant an idea Marcus was in the middle of loving before he abandoned it in a driveway like one of his business ventures. I transferred $2,800 to the mortgage lender at 11 p.m. That night, same as always. Then I made rice and groundnut soup from a recipe my father used to make, because it was cheap and it was warm and sometimes when you're lonely enough. Cooking someone's recipe is the closest you can get to them. I found out about the refinance application on a Wednesday, not from Marcus, not from my mother, from my bank. I got an alert standard notification, the kind your bank sends when someone runs a credit inquiry on your account. Hard pull, associated with a mortgage application. I sat up in bed at 7:14 a.m. and read it twice. Someone had run my credit as part of a mortgage refinance application. My name, my social security number, my credit history, pulled for a loan I hadn't applied for. That's not something that happens by accident. That's a document with a signature. I called my bank's fraud line. They couldn't tell me details, not their mortgage department, different institution. But they confirmed hard inquiry, mortgage related, initiated 6 days ago. I called Marcus. Straight to voicemail, I called my mother. She answered on the second ring and I could hear Duke barking in the background, which meant Marcus was home. Mama, did Marcus apply to refinance the house? A pause, a long one. The kind where someone is deciding how much to tell you. He's been looking into some options. With my credit, another pause. He said it was just to see if it was possible, just exploring. He ran a hard inquiry on my credit without telling me, Mama. Rachel, that's fraud. She went quiet. Not the empty quiet of someone with nothing to say, but the dense quiet of someone who knows exactly what's been said and is choosing not to hold it. He was going to talk to you, she said finally. Before anything was finalized, I got off the phone. I sat on the edge of my bed and thought clearly for the first time in a long time about what I actually knew versus what I'd been choosing to believe. I opened my laptop. I pulled up 7 years of bank statements. I'd never totaled them. I'd kept records, yes, because I'm a credit analyst and record keeping is automatic, but I'd never added them up. I added them up. $2,800 a month for 7 years. Some months were $3,100 when taxes and insurance spiked. A few months where I'd also paid for repairs, the water heater in year 2, $1,800. The fence replacement in year 5, $3,200. A new HVAC unit in year 6 that arrived in July when Marcus sent me a photo of my mother sweating in the living room and said, "Ratchet's 94 degrees in here, I don't know what to do." Total, $238,400. I read the number back to myself out loud. The apartment was very quiet, $238,400. More than I had ever earned in any 2-year span of my working life. Paid out in monthly installments, automatic transfers, so steady and so consistent that they'd become invisible to me the way a sound becomes invisible when you've lived next to it long enough. I saved the document, I named it Payments. Then I opened a second tab and started reading about unauthorized credit inquiries, cosigner rights, and something called equitable interest in property. The match was lit. What I needed now was a direction to point it. Her name was Denise Carmichael. Office on the 4th floor of a building downtown. Plants on every windowsill, framed degree from UNC Law on the wall. And the particular energy of a woman who had seen every version of this situation before and was no longer surprised by any of them. I brought the folder, full printout. Every transfer, every repair receipt, the credit inquiry alert. And the screenshot I'd taken 6 months earlier of a Facebook post Marcus made about his renovation vision for the house, which included a photo of himself in my father's kitchen holding a paint. Jibba. Denise put on her reading glasses and went through it page by page. Her pen, a red one, clicked 3 times at the beginning and then went quiet. She made notes on a yellow legal pad. She did not make sympathetic noises. She did not say, "Oh, honey," or "I'm so sorry." She read like a person who understood that paper tells the truth when people won't. When she finished, she took off her glasses and looked at me. "You've been the sole contributor to this mortgage for how long exactly?" 6.5 years effectively. He sent money the first 3 months. Total received from him, $2,400 over 7 years. She wrote that down, capped her pen, looked at me again. "And your name is on the cosigner agreement. Your credit was pulled without your authorization for a refinance application, and you're not on the deed." "Correct," she nodded slowly. The way doctors nod when the test results confirm what they already suspected. "You have standing," she said, "for an equitable interest claim based on unjust enrichment." North Carolina courts have recognized this in cosigner cases where one party carries the entire mortgage burden. What does that mean in practice? It means the court can acknowledge that you've built equity in that home through your payments, regardless of whether your name is on the deed. If the house is sold, you're entitled to a portion of the proceeds proportional to your contribution. And if Marcus tries to sell without telling me, she picked up her pen again. That's where it gets interesting. She explained that because I was still on the cosigner agreement, any refinance application required my participation and signature. Marcus couldn't remove me without my cooperation or a court order. More importantly, if he attempted to sell the property and a title search revealed the outstanding cosigner agreement, the transaction would flag. "He can't sell that house cleanly without dealing with you first," she said. "He just doesn't know that yet." For the first time in 7 years, I felt the math working in my favor. What do I do first? I asked. "We send a letter," she said, "formal demand. Acknowledge your contributions, assert your equitable interest, request that your name be removed from the mortgage through a refinance in which you participate and receive compensation, or that the property be sold with proceeds distributed equitably." And if they ignore it, she almost smiled. "Then we file." I signed the retainer that afternoon, took the elevator down 4 floors, stepped out into the November air and stood on the sidewalk for a moment, listening to traffic and pigeons, and the particular sound of a city that doesn't care what just happened to you inside a building. I bought a coffee, real coffee from a cafe I'd been walking past for 3 years. Large, oat milk, no sugar, $7. I drank it standing on the sidewalk, and it was the best $7 I had ever spent. Denise sent the demand letter on a Tuesday. Certified mail, return receipt requested. I tracked it online the way you track a package you've been waiting a long time for. Delivered Thursday. Signed for by M. Okonkwo. I know because I refreshed the tracking page 11 times that day. Marcus called Friday evening. I let it ring. He called again. I let it ring again. He texted, "Rachel, what is this?" I texted back one sentence: "Please direct all communication to my attorney, Denise Carmichael. Her number is in the letter." He called twice more that night. I did not answer. I made dinner, beans and rice, same as always. The meal I'd been eating for 7 years because it was cheap and filling and asked nothing of me. I ate it slowly and watched a documentary about coral reefs and went to bed at 9:30. My mother called Saturday morning. Rachel, baby, mama, Marcus is very upset, I know. He says this letter is going to ruin the family. He says you're being, she chose the word carefully, cold. I thought about that word, cold. I rolled it around in my head the way you roll a marble around in your palm. Mama, I asked, do you know how much money I've put into that house? She was quiet. $238,000, I said. I have the records. Every transfer every month for 7 years. Marcus sent me $2,400 in the first 3 months and nothing since. I've been carrying that mortgage alone. Another quiet, a different quality of quiet than Marcus's angry silences. This one felt heavier, older, more complicated. I didn't know it was that much, she said finally. I know you didn't, and that's worth something, Mama, but knowing it now is what matters. She said she needed to think. I told her I understood. I told her I loved her because I did, because love and accountability are not opposites even when the world treats them that way. She hung up. I washed my breakfast bowl and went for a run. It was cold and gray and perfect. Marcus hired a lawyer 2 weeks later. His lawyer sent a response letter suggesting my equitable interest claim was without merit and that my contributions were in the nature of a gift to the family. A gift, 7 years. $238,000. A gift. I forwarded it to Denise. She called me immediately. They're going to argue gift, she said. It's their only play. Is it a strong argument? She paused just long enough to be honest. It's an argument. It's not a good one when we have 7 years of transfer records and zero documentation of any gift agreement. Gifts at this scale require some evidence of intent. Monthly transfers on the first of every month for 7 years don't look like gifts. They look like mortgage payments. We filed the equitable interest claim in January. Marcus's deposition was scheduled for a Thursday in March. I wasn't in the room. Denise was, with a court reporter and Marcus's attorney. A man named Gerald who wore a bow tie and a confident expression that I watched deflate in real time through Denise's recap that evening. She called me at 6 p.m. I was sitting on my couch in the studio apartment, still in my work clothes, eating crackers because I'd forgotten to make dinner. He didn't do well, she said. He claimed the transfers were reimbursements for emotional and caretaking labor he provided to your mother. When I asked him to describe the nature of that labor, he mentioned making grocery runs, driving her to doctor's appointments, and general household management. And I asked him to provide records of those services. Hours, dates, any documentation at all. He had none. He had a photograph of himself at a grocery store. From 2021, one photograph. I ate a cracker. I then showed him Exhibit C, she continued, which is the 7 years of transfer records, and asked him to explain how $238,000 in monthly mortgage transfers constituted reimbursement for grocery runs. What did he say? He said, and I'm quoting from the transcript, "It was just how we worked things out as a family." I looked at my ceiling. The apartment ceiling had a water stain I'd been looking at for 4 years. His own attorney stopped the deposition twice to confer, Denise said. After the second break, Gerald approached me in the hallway and mentioned the possibility of settlement. How much? She named a number, I said no. She named another number, I said no. Rachel, she said gently, I want to make sure you understand you have the right to settle at any, Denise. I want them to calculate what I'm owed based on my actual contribution to the equity, not a number that's convenient for Marcus. A pause, I heard her pen click. Then we proceed, she said. We proceeded, it took 4 more months. 2 additional filings, one motion from Marcus's attorney that Denise dismantled with a 17-page response brief, and one tense phone call between attorneys in which, Denise told me later, Gerald used the words, my client acknowledges significant contributions, which in legal terms meant, we lost. The settlement was reached on a Wednesday afternoon. I was at my desk at work running credit reports when my phone buzzed with a text from Denise. 2 words, call me. I went to the conference room. Close the door, here's what they're offering, she said, and named a number. It was more than I'd dared to let myself want. It was less than what I'd actually paid. But it was real, and it was mine, and it was attached to a signed agreement in which Marcus acknowledged my equitable contributions to the property. I sat in the conference room for a moment after I hung up. The fluorescent lights hummed. Someone's leftover lunch from yesterday was still in the corner, and the room smelled faintly of reheated soup. I thought about the studio apartment with the brick wall window, the blue thermal lunch bag, the zip tie where the car door handle used to be. The 7 Januaries I'd run outside in the dark because I couldn't afford a gym. The birthday I spent alone eating takeout because I'd already transferred the mortgage payment, and there was nothing left for anything celebratory. I thought about how much it costs to love people who don't protect you back. I called Denise. Take it, I said. The settlement funded in June. Marcus had to sell the house to pay me and clear the cosigner agreement. My mother moved to a two-bedroom apartment near my aunt on the other side of Greensboro. She didn't complain. I think part of her, a part she would never say out loud, was relieved to be somewhere smaller and quieter, somewhere that asked less of everyone. My credit score had taken a 17-point hit during the filing period. I watched it the way you watch a slow-healing bruise. By August, it was recovering. By October, it was back above where it started. I used my settlement to do something I had not let myself imagine for 7 years. I bought a house. Mine, just mine. A small craftsman bungalow 12 minutes from work with a front porch, and a lemon tree in the backyard that someone had planted decades ago and left for me to inherit. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a kitchen with southern exposure that fills with yellow light every morning by 9 o'clock. I carried my own boxes in, all 4 trips, all 3 hours. I put my father's photo on the mantle, the one from my parents' 25th anniversary, him in a blue suit, laughing at something off camera. I stood in the kitchen that first evening. The lemon tree was lit up gold in the last light. The refrigerator hummed. My sneakers were loud on the hardwood floor. I had never heard my own footsteps sound like they belonged somewhere before. I made rice and groundnut soup, my father's recipe, and ate it at a table with 2 chairs I'd bought at a second-hand shop. I sat in one and left the other empty. And I thought about all the Sunday dinners I'd sat through at someone else's table eating food I'd helped pay for and being treated like a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. At my table, I wasn't a guest. I wasn't help. I wasn't the quiet one with the good credit and the bad deal. I was home. People ask me if I regret the 7 years. I get this question a lot when I tell this story. Here's the honest answer. I regret nothing about loving my family. I regret everything about confusing love with silence. I confused them for a long time. I thought that being the one who kept the lights on without complaint was a form of devotion. And maybe it was, but devotion without honesty isn't love. It's performance, and I performed for 7 years in an empty theater while the audience went home and remodeled the lobby. What I know now, standing in my own kitchen in my own house with my own mortgage that my own name alone is attached to, is this. The moment you stop undervaluing your own contribution is not a betrayal of the people who needed you. It's the beginning of being honest with them about what you cost. You are not the backup plan, you are not the family ATM. You are not the quiet one who holds everything together while everyone else gets to fall apart. You are a person with a name on a document somewhere that is costing you more than you've admitted to yourself. Go look at that document, add up what it says. And then ask yourself, is this a gift I'm giving, or a weight I've been handed and told to call a gift? Because there's a difference, and the difference is worth knowing. My name is Rachel Okonkwo. I'm 41 years old. I have a lemon tree in my backyard, a porch I sit on in the evenings, and a credit score that is, as of this morning, exactly where it deserves to be. And for the first time in a very long time, the math is working in my favor. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and leave a comment below. I read every single one. Tell me your version, tell me the